That means that you want your client to get to the point where they can be comfortable with their authentic selves in the present moment. So they're no longer a prisoner of their childhoods. Notice I say I know of, not I know. I know of many Buddhist practices, or if you like Christian ones, that would deepen or promise to deepen your capacity to love and to be open and so on. I don't engage in them. However, what I do, I think, is equally important. And for my mind, essential, which is that I look at what's in the way of love. Because love is the baseline. Love is, we were created to love. We actually were. I don't mean that in any airy-fairy spiritual sense. I'm saying we were created to love. We wouldn't survive otherwise. We have this system in our brain that impels us to love. And almost anybody who has a deep spiritual experience will come to the realization that there's only love. I've had glimpses of that. So what I do, both with myself and certainly with people I work with, I say, well, the love is you. The love is in you. It's your nature. What's in the way of it? That doesn't mean that cultivating practices to strengthen your connection to it doesn't work. It's just that that's not how I work. I think just my mind is too skeptical. Because I can always tell myself and recite wonderful things, and there's always a voice saying, yeah, sounds nice, so what? You know? I'm just talking about my own mind. That same mind helps me in many ways, but I think it also perhaps excludes me sometimes. So that's my answer, is that for me, it's a matter of knowing. I mean, I really do know that it's all about love. How do I know that? I've learned it, right? How do I learn it? I learned it. I might not have said that 30 years ago. I wouldn't have said it 30 years ago. So for me, it's a question of, well, what's in the way of it? It's like when you asked about grief, you notice I gave pretty much the same answer. Let's see what's in the way of it.
Do you ever feel like no matter how much love you try to give, something's always in the way? Like you're holding back, but you don't even know why? I've been there. And for the longest time, I thought it was just me, that maybe I wasn't built for love the way others were. But the truth is, the love is there. It's always been there. What gets in the way? It's the guilt, the trauma, the stuff we've carried for so long we barely recognize it anymore. And if we don't confront it, it spills into our relationships, into how we parent, into how we live. So, how do we break free?
I thought life wasn't worth living at some point. Even though I had everything to live for, quote unquote, family, marriage, good work, and all that. And then I started asking, but it's interesting, I don't know if you've read Dante, the Inferno, but it begins with the classic lines, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says, midway through life, I lost my way. And I don't know, I ended up on a dark path. It was fearful, he says, and he couldn't find his way back. And in order to redeem himself, what does he have to do? He has to go into Inferno, and he has to go into hell. And he has to confront all the dark parts of himself before you can get to purgatory and then, heaven. So that happened to me midway through life, and I had to confront the internal hell that I was carrying, that I was generating. I don't know why, and I didn't know why. I thought this is just life, because of course the life you lead is the only life you ever recall, unless you recall past lives, which I don't. So I don't. My mind doesn't even go there. But then you realize that this hell that you're generating is coming from somewhere within yourself. And one of the first books I read was Alice Miller and her book, The Drama of the Gifted Child. The original German subtitle of which was Prisoners of Childhood. And she was saying that fundamentally we're all prisoners of our childhood. In other words, the dynamics that were imprinted in us early on in life end up forming a cage or a prison from which we have to liberate ourselves. And that was very illuminating to me. And so then I gradually began to liberate myself. It's a real process, when it's ongoing. I can't claim that I'm finished with it. I don't think I ever will be, which is perfectly okay. Sometimes people ask me, well, do you have to totally heal yourself before you become a therapist? And I said, oh my God, if that was the case, I wouldn't do any of the work that I'm doing. But the other thing people ask is it enough to understand things intellectually? And I said, my answer to that one is, if it was enough to understand things intellectually, then I would have been a perfect person decades ago. So on the one hand, it's never over. But on the other hand, intellectual awareness is far from sufficient. So as I'm sure many of you know, we have to really work it through all our emotions in our bodies, not just our intellects. And that's an ongoing process. And from the point of view of those of you that are therapists, you have to ask yourself, well, what is my goal as a therapist? And I teach my students, you have two goals. One is for yourself, and that's to get yourself fired as soon as possible for the right reason. And that means that you want your client to get to the point where they can be comfortable with their authentic selves in the present moment. So they're no longer a prisoner of their childhoods. But in order to do that, they have to see themselves clearly. Now, for people to see themselves clearly, try this as an experiment. How can you see your face clearly? Unless you're having a deep spiritual experience, which is beyond words and beyond cognition, such as I've never had, you can't see your face clearly without a mirror. It's very hard for us to see ourselves clearly without a mirror. And guess what? When people come to you, they're coming to you because they want to see themselves in a mirror. They want to see their true selves. If they could see their true selves, they would not be needing to see you. So they need to see themselves clearly. But for you to be able to be that mirror, guess what? You have to be clear. That's why the most important work we ever do is on ourselves. And that's why it has to be ongoing.
Okay, so here's the thing. I used to think love was this elusive thing, like something I just couldn't access, especially in relationships. I'd be with someone, and no matter how much I wanted to feel open and connected, there was always this wall. And I'd wonder, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? Why can't I just love fully like other people seem to? But then I realized it wasn't about finding love or creating it. It's already there, like literally baked into who we are as humans. We're built for love. I mean, think about it. We wouldn't survive without it. We're wired for connection from the moment we're born. But when you've been through trauma, whether it's from your childhood, past relationships, whatever, it's like there's this barrier inside of you that keeps that love locked away. And trust me, I've spent years battling with that. It's not a quick fix and it's not easy, but it's real. And I think for anyone who's been through trauma, especially when it comes to relationships, this is the work. Not trying to be perfect or constantly searching for love outside of yourself, but just slowly peeling back the layers of what's keeping you from feeling the love that's already there.
Shame there for sure. Yeah.
I got it. And as a parent, as you know from that book, I went through the same thing. And even long after I wrote that book, I continued to carry guilt and self-blame about the experiences that my children had in a home with two very stressed parents, sometimes at each other's throats and sometimes not talking to each other at all. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I get that. One of my sons and I, his name is Daniel, him and I are actually going to write a book together called Hello Again, a fresh start for adult children and their parents. And that's after we finish this current book. And you might want to look at YouTube and look us up in this talk that we give together on that topic. Now, I know your kids are not adults yet, but you just might get something out of it. Okay?
Yeah.
Just Google Daniel and Gabor Mate, that's all, on YouTube. You'll find it. It's been seen by about 300,000 people. Now, going back to your shame and guilt. So let's agree on something. Had you not had been addicted, had you not been going through difficult recovery, had you and your wife had not had significant deep stresses that went back to your childhood and to hers, otherwise she wouldn't have been with you. So it's not just about you, by the way.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
But had that not had happened, your children would have an easier time in life. Let's agree on that, okay? Let's also agree that had all that stuff not happened, they wouldn't be facing some of the difficulties that they're facing right now. At what day? I'm going to ask you a number of questions, okay? Inquiry. The first question is, do you remember the date and the time of the day when you woke up and you decided, I'm going to screw up my kids?
No.
That memory, what?
No,
I'm pretty sure that didn't happen, right?
Definitely.
Did you? I'm going to screw my kids up.
No.
I'm going to impose on my kids some of the traumas that I experienced. You didn't make that decision, did you?
Well, no.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah, okay.
I get that. But in terms of a decision to create problems for your kids,
no.
How old were you as a child when your parents decided to work on themselves and to work out their traumas so they wouldn't keep passing it on to you? How old were you when that happened?
Still.
For your kids, right? Can you realize what a gift you're giving them? Can you realize how wonderful it is for them that they have parents who are seeking to become, or who are becoming conscious? So when you catastrophize, all you're doing is you're projecting your own childhood onto your kids.
For sure.
Do you see that?
I do.
Can you acknowledge yourself for that?
Yes.
If you feel anything, I'm just asking, can you acknowledge yourself for that?
Yes.
I'll come to my third question. When in your life have you not felt guilty, Mike? I'm going to make a wild guess here. The guilt was yours before you had kids.
Yeah.
True enough, when we have children and we let them down in some ways, some remorse is inevitable. But that deep sense of guilt about yourself, you had that long before you even looked at your wife, never mind the kids, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not part of being an addict. It's part of being a traumatized child.
Yeah.
Are guilty because you didn't make you happy, right?
Didn't make.
Or you have some guilt because you didn't make your kids as happy as you could have.
Ah.
So taking that hand, the spiritual teacher says that the biggest gift we can give our children is our own happiness. So you keep working on that. Your kids are going to be just fine. Now, your guilt has nothing to do with your kids. There's some healthy remorse about your kids. That's it. But
Yeah.
that's not guilt.
No.
So your guilt predates your children. So whenever you notice that guilt, but guilt once it becomes ingrained, it'll use anything as further evidence.
Yes.
So all your guilt that you've had all your life is doing that has to do with nothing to do with what you ever did wrong. It has to do with an impossible task that you were given as a kid to make your mother happy. It was totally impossible. It should never have been your job. But you were given that and you took it on because you couldn't help it. And you failed at it. And hence the guilt. And that guilt will now use anything as further evidence to justify its existence.
Still.
Well, I just noticed that the feeling of guilt, like when you, there's a final question and I'll let you go.
Yeah. Sure.
As a final question, when you feel the guilt, where in your body do you feel it? Where does it show?
100.
Allow yourself to feel into it a little bit now. Is that possible? Just have this question. How familiar is that feeling to you? And how far does it go back? How familiar it is, and how far does it go back? You know, and what answer might come up for you about that?
Part of.
Specific incident, but can you agree that it goes back before you had children?
Yes.
Do your kids a favor. Don't make it about them. Don't make it about them. Okay? They don't want to be the effects of your guilt.
No. They.
I realize that this guilt I've been carrying, it's not even about the present. It's old, it's deep. It started long before I had kids or got into relationships. It's rooted in this feeling of not being enough, of not making my own parents happy when I was growing up. As a kid, I internalized that. And now it pops up whenever I feel like I'm letting someone down, especially my kids. Like if they're struggling or if I snap at them when I'm stressed, that old guilt voice says, "See, you're failing them." But here's the wild part. I've learned that a lot of that guilt has nothing to do with the reality of my life right now. It's like this echo from my childhood that keeps bouncing back, no matter how much progress I've made. The hard part? Not letting it define my relationship with my kids. They don't deserve to carry the weight of my guilt, just like I shouldn't have been expected to carry my parents' emotions. But that's how it happens, right? The cycle continues until you notice it and do something about it. So here's something I've really come to understand about guilt and compassion, especially when it comes to relationships, parenting, and dealing with our pasts. Guilt? It's tricky. It doesn't just show up out of nowhere. For me, it's this constant companion, lurking, telling me I've messed up, that I'm not doing enough. And when you've been through trauma or difficult experiences, especially as a parent, that guilt can feel overwhelming. Like you've somehow passed your own hurt onto your kids, and now you're responsible for their struggles. But here's the thing. I didn't consciously decide to screw anything up, just like no one else does either. And this is where compassion comes in, not just for my kids, but for myself. It's about being able to say, yeah, I've messed up at times, but I'm still learning, and that's okay. It's not about excusing bad behavior or not taking responsibility. but about realizing that I can't change the past. What I can do is be present now, work through those old feelings, and try not to pass them on. Healing is never perfect or linear. It's messy and it's ongoing. But the beautiful part, you don't have to be fully healed to start making a difference in your life and the lives of the people you love. Every moment of awareness, every time you show yourself compassion, you're changing the story. You're breaking the cycle. So don't wait until you feel fixed to give yourself a break or to love those around you fully. Right now, in all your imperfections, you have the power to rewrite your narrative, to live a life where guilt doesn't get the final word. Keep going. You're doing better than you think. And hey, if this resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Inside Serene, your mental fitness channel. Let's keep growing together.